More than 30 states in Nigeria are currently suffering from extensive destruction being visited on them by the pervasive flooding. According to latest figures, close to 700 lives have been lost so far, and about 1.5 million people displaced, and about 440,000 hectares of farmland have been submerged, raising the real prospect of food insecurity in the coming year. Well, Professor Matazu is Director General of the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, and he joins us now to discuss the flooding and the measures being taken to reduce the impact on states and people through adequate warning information. Welcome to the show, Professor. Thank you for your time and for joining us this afternoon. All right, sir, we know that you are the Director General of the Nigerian Meteorological Agency. Since 2012, Nigeria has not experienced this level of flooding. We're seeing it firsthand. It's quite shocking. Nigerian citizens are wondering, in the last 10 years of the last catastrophe like this one, what has the Meteorological Society done in order to learn from past mistakes, take opportunities, take advantage of the opportunities on ground in terms of technology, what have you, in order to predict weather patterns and to allow the other agencies know the information so that they can mitigate these catastrophes that we are currently facing?
Okay, thank you very much for this very important question. I would like, first of all, to sympathize with the family of the people that lost their lives, and of course also those that recorded a number of damages to their property, including farmlands and houses. Of course, as for us in Nigerian Meteorological Agency, as far back as February 15th, precisely, our Honorable Minister of Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika, unveiled this 2022 seasonal climate prediction, in which we emphasize and highlight areas of high impacts. And as far back as February, we've informed Nigerians in all strata that this year was going to be well above normal in terms of rainfall activities. And also on a global scale, we've experienced what is called triple dip La Nina. That is a weather phenomenon that triggers some climatic changes over parts of the world, including Africa. So this is the third year that the globe is experiencing La Nina for 2020 and 2021, and of course this year. And this type of sea surface temperature enhances rainfall activities over this part of Africa. And what we have witnessed over the last few months, true to our saying as far back as February, in which we also followed up with updates on fortnight basis on the imminent weather condition, including high impact weather forecast. We've been given this on 24-hour basis and also on 72-hour basis, three days, highlighting areas of high impacts, monitoring the soil moisture, including also the prevailing rainfall activities. So for this year, the records available with NIMET indicates all the northern states experience well above normal rainfall, even higher, much more higher in terms of intensity and magnitude than the 2012. For Sokoto, they got about 200% increase above their normal rainfall activities. Parts of Jigawa experience more than 50% increase. And this is also just one indicator of climate change, which triggers high extreme events such as these types of rainfall. And this, as we have seen previously, has triggered flash flood across cities, especially due to high intensity rainfall activities, coupled with some of our land use management practices, building on drainages and also excessive cutting down of trees and excess degradation of soil and of course overgrazing. So this also enhances the runoff normally through our major and smaller river and streams. And of course also some of the dams got well above their normal inflow, and they had to spill some of the excess water. And so we got a combination of flash flood due to high intensity rain that persists for this year, coupled with the swelling of these rivers due to discharge from some of the internal dams within the country and of course the neighboring countries. So for us, we have done our work, and Nigerians are our witness. We have done excellently well because if you look at the strata in providing climate services, we produce the service and then we relate to enabling MDS agencies. NEMA, they are our direct consumers, and Nigerian Hydrological Agency also direct consume our service. And of course, all other ministries we've relayed this information. And what we have seen, I think, is the air generally globally is quite highly extreme. We've seen this in America, we've seen this in Asia, including Pakistan, that experienced 1,000 millimeters of rainfall within one day, unprecedented amount. So, and of course, even in Nigeria, the amount of rainfall we've received this year is quite unprecedented. And still, we have highlighted last few days that some parts of Lagos, Delta, Bayelsa, and some coastal cities also are prone to this flood because the rain is now concentrating in the southern parts of the country, approaching the second peak of the season.
Now, there's been some sort of controversy over whether the floods are purely weather-related or how much impacts the dams, especially the Lagdo Dam in northern Cameroon, has had on the level of flooding that we've experienced in some parts of the country. But I'd like us to talk about solutions now. Going forward, what urgent measures can we put in place to mitigate the impact, of this weather phenomenons that we cannot really control, that is beyond human control? For instance, will the completion of the Dasenhauser Dam in neighboring Adamawa State, help mitigate the impact of these floods, especially when Cameroon releases excess water from the Lagdo Dam?
Yes, of course. Globally, even in the next few weeks, the whole world will converge in Africa, in Cairo precisely, for the COP meeting and other negotiation at that level, because generally the climate change is really impacting on all sectors, including even the advanced countries. We've seen how America suffered. We're battered with a lot of hurricane impacts over the last few weeks. Generally speaking, as human beings, you need to adapt to changing climate because it has come to stay. And with all indicators we have seen in our records that there are very much local evidence of climate change in Nigeria, and one of which is the change in rainfall pattern in terms of intensity and also the amount. And this also is associated, is coupled with the rainfall within short duration. That means the growing season lifespan is being shortened, and that means there will be a concentration of rainfall activities within minimal period. And this definitely will trigger a lot of flood waters. So two things we need to mitigate. First, mitigation, and another, we need to provide, as we are doing, early warning. We are doing very much well in providing early warning, well in advance. We've given the Nigerian citizen about 4 to 5 months least time on this information. And if in the early warning system there is no early action, so the whole essence of that, the whole resources spent will be wasted because people do not heed to such advisory. So we advise citizens and also especially state governments to liaise with the agencies like NIMET and NISA in order to integrate all this focus into their planning activities, including also city managers, town and regional planning managers. We've given a lot of information that NEMA came up with risk maps of all these vulnerable areas, but it's still people living and also constructing and so there should be a lot of enforcement in terms of town planning. And of course also we need to continue to do a lot of tree planting. The rate of deforestation in the country is quite alarming, for over 300,000 hectares per annum. And this is quite alarming. So the vegetal cover tends to reduce a lot of runoff and also enhances underground water. And of course, also on a medium and long-term scale, we need also to have the dams on this river Benue in order to stabilize and contain some of this water. Because, of course, we know dams, one of the purposes of dam is to control flood. And as a result of that, we need to also have this dam in the nearest future in the country. But of course, earlier before that, we are working very hard now to create more coordination between the Cameroonian authorities. I know Nigerian Hydrological Agency has been given such tasks in order to monitor on real time the release of the water and also how to reduce the excess release and also inform people well in advance. And the second component of this is to adapt, and adaptation in all ramifications, including our farming practices. In our advisories and in our book, Seasonal Climate Prediction document is available on the website. And we also have an app that people can access on real-time basis, NIMET SCP, on all the platforms. You could get information from the 774 local governments. So we need to adjust to our farming activities. So we have signed an MOU with Federal Ministry of Agriculture, whereby there are a lot of advisories on climate-smart agricultural practices. And this will also tend to increase yield and reduce also loss of crops due to high impact weather. And of course also including all our building plans also. We've just had a seminar last 2 days with the Nigerian Agricultural Society, and whereby we've emphasized the uptake of weather information into new designs of buildings, because globally the built environment contributes about 27% of the greenhouse gases, because that is where people require cooling and heating, which emit these gases. So if we align with the prevailing weather condition and also the scenarios of changing climate in the nearest decades, we should be able to come up with climate-smart designs and green infrastructure. Our roads and bridges should also take you into this. Advisories, we have abundant record of about 130 years climatic data over Nigeria, which we could give and provide advisories on order to come up with a climate-smart infrastructure, because the present roads and infrastructure really need to align with the especially extreme events we've been experiencing in terms of violent storms, high-intensity rains, and other extreme events across the country.
Well, Professor, it's good to know all the technological input that is, or thought that is being put into mitigating the disasters and also predicting the floods. But we heard former Governor Fashola speaking, and he was talking about the fact that, of course, people were warned and people did not evacuate. And we see this as a human issue. I mean, it happens all over the world. Just recently in the US, we saw in the state of Florida, mass amounts of people did not evacuate. They thought that they could weather the storm and they stayed. And of course, it was a catastrophe. Here, I'm not so sure it's the same situation as in Florida. It seems there is nowhere for the individuals who are here to go. There's a lack of thought in terms of infrastructure when it comes to disaster situations for those lowest in our society who don't have multiple places to reside. I'm wondering if there's any thought being put towards that. I do know that, I mean, you're speaking on behalf of the Meteorological Society, but I just want to list out a few of the agencies who are in charge of issues one way or another concerning floods, and whether or not they have any burden of responsibility to rehouse or even help individuals relocate themselves when they issue that flood warning, because a warning is just not enough. There's the National Disaster Management Authority. There's the Nigerian Center for Disease Control. There's the National Emergency Management Agency, the Federal Ministry of Health, the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency. There's quite a few agencies there, 0 agencies for the rehousing of displaced individuals due to disaster flooding. Your thoughts on that?
Okay, thank you very much. Just want to correct that we are not a society, it's an agency of government, Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET. You know, actually, in terms of disasters, everywhere happens at the last mile. And at the last mile in Nigeria means it happens at the district, community, district, and local government levels. And of course, also, we have government tiers that are responsible for all issues concerning local governments and the state governments. I know pretty well NEMA, they're doing extremely well in terms of providing policies, guidelines, information, and relaying our focus and converting it into early warning, also information, including the advisories. And of course, many states, they have state emergency management agencies. And also, states also should have local, what is called local government emergency management agency, LEMAs. And in this strata, we should see more coordination. So I think we need to do more of coordination between between the federal and state and local government level. We've been providing all the policy guidelines and information at the federal to the state levels. But if you don't have a framework, institutionalized framework in order for such LEMAs and SEMAs to be able to provide alternative evacuation camps, and of course also provide certain logistics, and also provide even local information service involving the communities. So I am aware the Federal Minister of Humanitarian Affairs last year developed a framework on flood mitigation, and it was also approved by FEC. And the last few days, the President of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, gave a marching order of 90 days to come up with a flood mitigation plan for the country. And I know all stakeholders brought on board in order to provide more effective coordination. Because as for us, in climate services, it's a value chain. And this value chain contains the producers of forecasts like NIMET, and then also the enabling agencies, ministries, departments, and agencies, including non-governmental organizations, and then also narrow down to the users. So this is pretty well explained in all our activities. But if you don't have a local framework that will now adopt and also integrate, consume, digest, and integrate this information early to the local citizens at the local levels, is very important to have this. So I agree that we need to do more, especially on effective coordination between the tiers of governments. And of course also for citizens to take forecast information as very serious, because due to climate change, the business is no more as usual. We need to be more disciplined to also take our personal security in our hand. And of course also, I'm sure government is NEMA, they are in all states, I know now, mostly providing relief materials. But if we do more of early warning, so the number of casualties definitely will reduce, because definitely climate change has come to stay, and we need to adapt to this changing scenario. And Nigeria is a signatory to all these international treaties, and we also have the Climate Change Council that has just taken off, and I'm sure this will also be part of all the coordination processes. Thank you.
Well, talking about early warnings, I'd like to have your assessment on how far-reaching these early warnings are. Are they headline news? Do they make front-page news? The people that will be affected, have they been equipped with knowledge of what to do in terms of flooding to minimize loss of lives? Are there emergency numbers that they can call? Does NIMET, engage with all levels of government to plan on what can be done to mitigate the impact of these floods? I'd just like your assessment, maybe reflect a bit and see if things could have been better handled and what lessons we can learn from here going forward so that we do not have such disasters again.
Yeah, I can mention here that we invited all the state governors in February by our Honorable Minister, including about 5 there are relevant commissioners of agri, water resources, environment, including state SEMAs, for our seasonal climate prediction. And we also preached during the release of the prediction that we are very open for partnership in other forums, because you need an entry point to be able to access a state. And so we've given about 4 months lead time for state governments to be able to invite us for downscaling, what we call downscaling, state level downscale. But this has happened in some states, but we need to do more, especially at the state government levels. We are very open for this collaboration, and in which we can send our officers to do roving workshop with all climate change agents and agri extension officers at the state level, relaying all this information. But for us, we leverage on technology, and we, during the unveiling, we release also the new app. And of course, also, we've signed an MOU with some organization like NISAL in trying to reach out to farmers. But I can say that in terms of the providing the early warning, because we have also database in our listserv of all relevant stakeholders, and of course including even the media, they should also be able to help us on relaying such information to the affected communities. I will give an example. During a hurricane event in America, you see all the cable network, all the news will center on monitoring the disaster and also the evacuation, and also if there is any release of information. But of course, I know we need to do more of the coordination with all the enabling agencies, including media organizations in the country.
Yeah, many agencies to coordinate there, but the work is ongoing. Concerning the work at the national level, because you've just explained that the state government has their part to do. Everyone has their part to do. But on a national level, there's reportedly no flood management policy in Nigeria. The flood management master plan, like you said, will be completed in about 3 years. But in the meantime, could more be done at the national level in terms of policies and getting laws enacted for flood mitigation, just as you said, making it a situation where it's broadcast on the news as a crawl or on radio stations as an emergency alarm, just some kind of policy in order to regularize the way that this information is passed out to citizens. It's also a thought that maybe due to a lack of understanding of the contemporary issues facing climate change, flooding, and all of that, and the local realities on ground, on part of our politicians, maybe there's a lack of understanding there, which is why it's not so critical for them to put this in the front burner. What could you say could get our politicians and policymakers to be more serious about taking action concerning floods and flood mitigation?
Yeah, I would like to correct that we have a flood mitigation plan in the country. It was coordinated by Federal Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, and all stakeholders, more than 10 ministries, including agencies like NIMET, were involved. And in the document, you see all our signatures there. I just made mention that because it's a national disaster, the President has directed the Federal Minister of Water Resources to coordinate developing a framework in providing lasting solution to this. In terms of policy, I can tell you that we have all the required policies. We've been implementing what we call the global framework on national climate services, which was downscaled as a national framework on application of climate services in the value chain. And also the implementation of the mitigation plan on flood also will really put stakeholders on board, including the media organization. There's a significant component of that document is we have a user component chapter, what we call user interface. And this is where all the relevant enabling stakeholders that should be able to relay this information to the main users at the last mile will get involved. For us, we've gone far in NIMET to even translate from the last 3 years all our seasonal climate prediction, covering more than 500 locations in the country in all the 36 state plus federal capital Abuja, whereby we translated this document in the 3 major languages of Hausa, Yoruba and Igbo, and all these are available on our websites. And we've also distributed it during the release and also during our downscaling level in order to reach out quickly and make the information user-friendly. But also, definitely at the policy level, I can tell you we have all the required policy guidelines and frameworks as a country, but we need to do a lot of response, especially by the users of the forecast. And of course, also global climate change is a global phenomenon, but there's a saying that on climate change, you have to think globally, but your action should be locally. So we should do more of local actions and getting all the relevant stakeholders on board. This definitely, WMO has confirmed that if you spend 1 naira on the early warning system, you are saving about 8 naira. And this 8 naira you are saving, if you didn't provide the warning, it will come in form of damages to infrastructure. And of course, you cannot even cost the loss of lives. But even damage to infrastructure, you're going to save 8 naira in doing that. And of course, the uptake of weather information definitely improve sustainability. And we are also we got our bill signed by the president of this country, which was repealed, and it gives us more authority to do this coordination. We're going to see more of this coordination in the country in the next few months.
Well, we sincerely hope so, Professor. I'm sure with all the help of all the agencies working, we can definitely push something forward, because it is a lot of agencies working and the disasters are still here. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, Professor Mansur Matazu, the Director General of the Nigerian Meteorological Agency.